We will now replace the suction tubing which we had previously pulled out of our light guide tube in order to feed through our new illumination light guide bundle. You can also use these steps to replace your suction channel if it has been kinked or if there's a hole in the suction channel. Replace the suction channel with the proper size suction channel tubing. This suction tubing already has one of the ends etched in order to be able to glue it into the body section. This will be the side that you pass up through your umbilical light guide tube till you meet the body control section. When passing your new suction channel through, be very careful that you do not push or exert any force where you may damage your light guide illumination bundle. Carefully pass up through tube, laying your connector and your light guide tube straight and flat along your working surface. Back in the body section, once the tubing is passed through your light guide umbilical cord tube, we can leave it and go back to our connector to refit it in the connector. Premix a small amount of 2-part epoxy before proceeding with gluing suction channel into body section. Using a piece of emery cloth, carefully grab your suction channel and bell out with a pair of dull tweezers. This will allow you to slide over your new suction channel onto your suction port assembly. This will stop you from getting glue in your air-water channels. Take your pre-mixed glue, and as long as it is tacky and not runny, put a bead of glue around the bottom of your suction pipe. Grabbing your new suction channel with the emery cloth, pull suction channel up and over the suction pipe, pulling it approximately 20 millimeters up pipe. Use remaining glue to cover top of new suction channel. Be sure to let the screw dry before proceeding with repair. Once the glue is dried, remove your toothpick. We will now reassemble the body control section and pull through our illumination light guide bundle. Grab your 3-prong support and very extremely carefully slide the support up and over your light guide bundle and channels. Rest the 3 prongs in the proper screw hole spot. Again, being careful not to pinch any of the wires, light bundle or image bundle if a fiberscope. Retain the 3 countersunk stainless steel screws and fasten down your 3-prong holder. Use a small amount of Loctite on the top of each head of your screws. The 3rd leg screw goes again through the slot in the top of your 3-prong holder. Feed your new light guide bundle through body control section. being extremely careful, pull up your light guide tube assembly and be absolutely sure that you are pinching or not crushing any of the tubes, wires, or light guide bundles. Retain your other 4 stainless steel countersunk screws. And tighten to your 3-prong assembly. Again, use a good thread locking adhesive. Apply a small amount. On top of each Phillips screw. Going back to our connector assembly, we'll now attach our suction tubing back onto the connector. Be sure that the umbilical light guide tube is flat and laying across your working area. Be sure that your connector is in the reference spot, which we marked on the connector, and the screw holes align. If it is twisted in any fashion, this will twist your suction channel. Your ferrules that we previously removed, slide them back on and over the suction channel. We need to cut the tubing, the Essex tubing, off using a very sharp X-Acto knife blade. Push in your suction channel slightly, and using your very sharp X-Acto blade knife, cut your tube, which should be parallel with the edge of your video connector. Slice the suction tube straight and clean so it will equal suction pipe threads. Using your dull tweezers and your emery cloth, hold your suction and bell out your suction tube with the tweezers, which will allow you to pull up your new channel over the suction pipe. Once the suction pipe is flush up against the threads, remove your emery cloth. Using a toothpick and some black RTV, cover the end of the new suction tube with the black RTV. Try not to get it on the threads of your suction pipe. And go around the entire diameter with the black RTV. Retrieve the 2 ferrules you should have put on previously. And tighten down ferrule clockwise onto suction port connector. Tighten it finger tight, then retrieve small needle nose pliers. And tighten until it is fully up against suction port. Be careful not to twist your suction pipe while tightening down this ferrule. You can mark the suction tubing with a permanent marker in order to be sure that it does not twist during tightening of this ferrule. Once the ferrules are fully tightened, we can now join our umbilical light guide tube back to our video connector or fibroscope connector. Again, being careful to match the marks we had previously made when removing and aligning the screw holes. Retrieve your 3 black countersunk screws. Once all 3 screws have been installed in your video connector, apply a small amount of Loctite on each screw head. We can now pull up our cone to seal our video or fibroscope connector. Our light guide suction tubing inside our umbilical cord and connector is now complete. Returning to your insertion tube in your body section, we'll go back to the tubes which we had previously pulled through our old damaged light bundles and attach our new light guide bundle to the 2 tubes. Be sure that the remainder of your light guide is not being restricted and will be able to flow through our insertion tube from the body section without hindrance. Push and pull in the tube. Observe it at the distal end to pull through that light bundle. At the distal end, observe which tube you have pushed and pull the first leg of your brand new light guide. Pull it through very slowly and surely, but do not force it in any way, otherwise you will severely damage your new light guide bundle and you will have to reinstall a brand new one. Go ahead and pull through the first leg of your fiber light guide illumination bundle. Back to our distal end. Once both light guides are pulled through the insertion tube, remove the plastic tubes. We will now insert our brand new light bundle into our distal end assembly. You'll need a toothpick and some paper towel or lens cleaner to clean the ends of both our illumination light guide bundles. Clean off the tip of our light guide bundle of all debris. Any debris will block the light which is transmitted through the bundle to the distal end. Clean both tips off carefully. If necessary, it might also be needed to clean out the distal end itself if there is any debris that has fallen inside or light guide lenses on the reverse side, this will need to be cleaned out. You can use either a toothpick and lens cleaner, or you can use forced air or compressed air to blow out these lenses. Please check underneath a microscope to see if there's any debris which has fallen into the two illumination light guide holes and onto the light guide lenses themselves. Again, use compressed air to clean out your light guide lens holes to be sure there's absolutely no debris inside distal end. Otherwise, it will interrupt the light transmission through the illumination light guide bundles. Be very careful and check underneath a microscope if need be to see that there's no debris inside these holes. We will now insert our light bundles into the end using a toothpick and a 1-part white RTV. Cover your light guide illumination bundle probe with the white RTV. Probe meaning our light guide outer sleeve. Be very careful not to get any white RTV on the tip of the illumination light guide bundle. Inserting light bundle into the appropriate hole. Carefully slide in our new light guide bundle and push up the sleeve and probe until it is completely flush up against distal end. Do not force it or crush the light guide bundle with your hand or fingers. Once it is flush to the distal end, using a very small number 1 screwdriver, tighten your locking set screw down onto the light guide probe sleeve. Finger tight. Do not over tighten, otherwise it will crush the light guide bundle sleeve. Once it is tightened down and resting up against your light guide lens, grabbing your video connector or fiberscope connector, hold the proximal end of the scope up to a light source, either a fluorescent light fixture or a light bulb, and check to be sure that your illumination light bundle is flush up against your light guide lens by holding the connector up to a light source and flashing it back and forth to be sure that it is flush up against the lens and that there is absolutely no debris which will block the light transmission through the lens. As long as it is clean, you can let the white RTV dry and repeat the procedure for the second light guide bundle. Again, be sure that the tip is clean from any debris. Coat the sleeve probe of your second illumination light guide bundle post. Making sure there is no debris in the hole of your light guide lens. Insert your second leg of your light guide fiber bundle and be sure it is again flush up to your distal end. Retrieving your number 1 screwdriver, tighten down this leg finger tight with your set screw internal in the distal end. Check both light lenses to be sure there is no debris and that the light bundle is flush up against the lenses. Once we are sure they are both seated properly and clean internally, move the existing white RTV around the post of your light guide. This will seal the light guide and hold it into place along with your set screw. Also fill in the set screw holes with the white RTV. Let this dry 1 to 2 hours before replacing our biopsy channel, sealing up our scope, and testing for leaks prior to sterilization and use. Once the white RTV is dry, the last step will be to replace our biopsy channel with a new biopsy channel, being sure to match the correct biopsy channel size to the particular scope you are working on. Please refer to the previous biopsy channel replacement to replace your biopsy channel, reassemble the endoscope, and test for air leaks. Once the biopsy channel has been replaced, we'll need to tuck in our light bundle into the body section. And pull up our body section cover piece, sliding the cover piece over your biopsy channel port and your illumination light guide bundles, angulation wires, and air water channels. Be extremely careful not to pinch any of the wires or bundles. This is a colonoscope. Slide your auxiliary air water feed up into its respective port, matching the hole and the screw covers. Retain your stainless steel screws with a Phillips screwdriver. Line, cover, and screw holes. And tighten down. Replace all stainless steel screws for body, the biopsy port, and if it's a colonoscope, the auxiliary water feed. Once all stainless steel screws have been replaced and tightened down, you may need to use some Loctite to seal up the heads of the screws. Retain your insertion tube body section locking ring and finger tight the ring up to the body control section. It's extremely important that we align our insertion tube so that it is straight. You can refer to your biopsy channel repair, or if you made a marking previous to where the insertion tube came to the body section, you can use that as your reference. Again, being extremely sure that your insertion tube is straight and the up angulation is straight according to the top of your body control section. If you are certain that insertion tube is aligned properly to the body control section, you need to use your insertion tool C-wrench to tighten locking ring from insertion tube onto body. Once insertion tube ring is tight fitted and you are absolutely positive that the insertion tube has been aligned correctly, apply a small amount of black RTV in front of retaining ring. Wipe off any excess black RTV. We will now pull up our body control covers. Be certain that the illumination light guide bundles are put inside the body cavity, along with any CCD wires if a videoscope, or the image bundle if it is a fibroscope. Do not pinch or crush any of these internal wires or bundles, otherwise severe damage will occur. As long as the angulation of the endoscope has been adjusted properly, we can now pull up our body control covers. Be sure that the O-rings, gaskets are clean and free of any debris. Be certain that you're not pinching any of the internal cables, wires, or light guide or image bundle, and pull up body cover up and over O-ring section. Pull up your body control locking ring, and again using the proper C-wrench tool, tighten ring on body control section. Retain your biopsy port assembly, and as long as O-ring is clean and free of debris, slide it down at the 90-degree mark, pushing in biopsy port. Using your tweezers, turn so it is matching to the slot where you apply the key. Retain your biopsy port key and slide it down into the slot with a hole facing the top so it is flush with body section. Retain your locking ring and screw down clockwise. Slide up your secondary control cover sleeve, making sure that the O-ring is clean and free of any debris. Slide up your O-ring, and finally slide your cone to meet your body section. Slide up cone and tighten to body. If the video endoscope freeze frame buttons are depressed and you do not get any freeze frame picture, VCR, or digital recording facility capability, that means that these switches are defective and will need to be replaced. Also, if they are leaking externally when pressure tested, if any bubbles are emitted from any of these switches, they will need to be replaced. The First step is to get a pair of dull tweezers and some alcohol. Slide your tweezers up into your light guide boot, applying the alcohol, which will allow you to unscrew your body section boot from your light guide tube. Once the boot has been pulled down, slide your boot down your light guide tube. If your boot does not pull down the O-ring holder, you will need to use your C-tool to unscrew this O-ring sleeve. Once the ring, you can unscrew counterclockwise and slide down to meet your cone. Using your thumb and forefinger, carefully push up side body cover. Using forefinger, slide up cover and slide down to meet cone. We have now exposed the internal structure of the control section, so we may replace our number 1 freeze frame button and our number 2, 3, and 4 switch block assembly, or if it is a 140 series scope, your 140 series number 2 and 3 switch head. Using a pair of tweezers, pull out your freeze frame button wire harness. This contains all the wires which you will need to unsolder and remove and reconnect using color-coded wires to actuate your freeze frame button and your switch head assembly. Slide off the heat shrink which covers your wires and each individual heat shrink in order to gain access to each individual wire. Using your soldering iron, you can either unsolder each wire, or you can use small diagonal cutters to cut each wire to split it from your umbilical control section, which these wires run down to our video connector, and from the wires that run to each individual switch. Once you have either cut or unsoldered each individual color-coded wire, we will now remove the number 1 freeze frame button and the switch block assembly. Using your Phillips head screwdriver, unscrew the 4 screws which hold in your number 1 freeze frame button. The screws will tend to fall in the body, so it is a good idea to use a magnetic tipped Phillips screwdriver. Retain the 4 screws. Remove the number 1 freeze frame button switch plate with a pair of tweezers. It should pull out and away, along with the black and white wire. Please take notice if there's any moisture on the switches. If there's any moisture on the switch inside the body or on the switch head, the instrument will need to be aerated in a vacuum chamber. Remove the defective number 1 switch assembly. Unscrew the next 4 Phillips screws from the top plate of the number 1 freeze frame button switch assembly. Using your tweezers, remove the top plate of your switch head assembly, making sure you note that one side of this plate has a smaller width than the other side. When you replace the new switch assembly, you will need to replace the smaller width at the leading edge of the body section. Insert a screwdriver to the bottom of the top cap of your number 1 freeze frame cap. If this cap had a leak in it or a hole, you will need to replace it. Using the screwdriver and a small ball-peen hammer, tap out the number 1 freeze frame cap. It is sealed in with black RTV, and you can easily remove it. You have now made an opening to allow for the replacement of the number 1 freeze frame switch cap. Clean out any debris that has aspired around the diameter of the number 1 freeze frame button we just removed. Retain your brand new video button switch for either 100 series or 140 series. Taking a replacement freeze frame button, apply small amounts of black RTV around diameter, the base of your new switch. This will allow it to seal airtight. Place the number 1 switch in the switch opening and be sure to align the number 1 at top of switch with number 2 button. As long as number 1 button is aligned with number 2, hold it down with your forefinger and obtain your bottom holding plate. Be sure that the smaller leading edge is towards you when placing it inside body. Once plate is set, using a Phillips screwdriver and a countersunk screw, screw in bottom plate to screw up and into your new number 1 freeze frame switch. Be sure that the plate remains straight and aligned with the other 3 holes. Obtain the other 3 countersunk screws and screw in to secure the bottom plate with the number 1 freeze frame switch top. Once switch is screwed down entirely with all 4 switches, obtain your new number 1 freeze frame switch assembly, placing over the 4 posts using a Phillips screwdriver and another countersunk Phillips screw, secure a plate to the 4 posts. Once all 4 screws have been applied into switch plate assembly, take your black and white wires and feed them through body to meet the ends of the other existing color-coded wires. Once the wires are pulled through, match the color-coding wires and using a soldering iron, solder these wires together. All the black wires tied together as a common ground. After the wires have been soldered, apply a good heat shrink tubing over the wire to prevent shorts from occurring with the other color-coded wires. Once you have soldered wires and applied heat shrink tubing, you'll need to test your new #1 freeze frame button by plugging in the video connector into CB100 or CB140 Olympus video processor and being sure that an endoscope takes pictures and actuates on CB100 or 140 processor. We will now remove and replace our switch block assembly. Utilizing your Allen key wrench, preferably a longer than a standard wrench, slide Allen key to meet Allen screw at the head of the block assembly and unscrew counterclockwise. Be careful not to strip your Allen key screw, otherwise it will need to be replaced. Once the screw has been loosened, you should be able to pull through your color-coded wires from the body control section. Once you have removed the switch block assembly, you will need to remove the blue plastic spacer from the old existing broken switch block assembly. Obtain your replacement new video head assembly. Retain your blue spacer and slide wires through and spacer with your new video head assembly. Pass the wires through the 2 holes at the top of your Olympus video endoscope. The black ground wires will pass through the top hole, being sure that the #2 freeze frame button is at the top of the video connector. Pass your 3 black wires through your top hole. Pass your 3 color-coded wires through the bottom hole. Pass the black ground wires and your color-coded wires through the body section to meet your existing primary color-coded wires. Being sure that the O-ring is perfectly clean, push your new switch head assembly up and over being sure that you do not kink or crush any of the contact wires. Apply your brand new video head switch to top of endoscope. While holding switch head onto top of endoscope with your hand, obtain your Allen screw wrench and be sure that screw is aligned in the threads of the female part of your video head switch assembly and tighten down firmly counterclockwise until video head is seated on top of endoscope. Once your new video head is on securely and there is no gaps between your blue plate and the endoscope, pull all your wires through again to meet your existing color-coded wires and solder them. Using solder iron, solder all your color code wires to match each other. There are a total of 5 common black wires, which all must be soldered together as one. Once you have soldered these wires together, apply a good heat shrink over each individual color-coded wire, including all the 5 black ground wires. Once all the color code wires have been soldered together, apply a larger piece of heat shrink to cover all the ends of the individually wrapped heat shrink wires so that you are able to stuff wires down into body section so they do not restrict your body cover from covering the opening of the control cover. You'll need to test your newly applied video freeze frame block assembly by plugging the endoscope into a CB100 or 140 processor and testing each button to make sure that each button actuates either the freeze frame VCR or digital recording device and actuates the tone on the Olympus processor. We can now bring up our body cover once the freeze frame buttons are tested. Again, be sure that all buttons actuate the Olympus processor to freeze and unfreeze image. Being sure that our O-ring is clean and free of all debris, pull up your body cover, pushing in top with your thumb, pushing down with your other thumb till it clicks into place. Be certain that you do not crush or pinch O-ring around cover. Bring up your O-ring assembly. You will need to use your C-wrench in order to tighten ring up and into body cover. Using a pair of dull tweezers and some alcohol, slide tweezers and alcohol up into cone and slide cone up to meet your body control section. Slide cone up onto O-ring connector and tighten down clockwise. We will now need to test our endoscope to be sure that we have sealed up the endoscope body covers properly, utilizing a handheld leak tester or an Olympus air leak tester. Insufflate scope and put into a sink of water and test for any leaks. If any bubbles appear in a continuous stream from any of our body plate covers, you'll need to pull off cover and reseal again using white lithium grease if needed. If your video freeze frame button switches are leaking, you'll need to loosen screws and then retighten down using white lithium grease on O-rings internally if needed. If number 1 freeze frame button is leaking, you'll need to use a black RTV to be sure that it is sealed internally. Any RTV put on the external part of the endoscope will be removed when it is sterilized during reprocessing. So be sure to seal switches internally and not externally. This supplement of the video is for Olympus colonoscopes, both video and fiber. When removing body plate covers, you will need to remove your auxiliary water feed. In order to do that, you will need to use a dull pair of tweezers and some alcohol to go underneath your auxiliary water feed cap, or B cap, and carefully pulling this cap up and off your auxiliary water feed. Be careful not to damage this. You will need to replace it, or if you do damage it, or if it is cracked or broken, you will need to replace it with a new B cap. Using your tweezers, loosen top of auxiliary water feed counterclockwise to remove the outer retaining ring. Retain this for reassembly. Pull off your top auxiliary water feed, which includes your top hat O-ring seal. If for any reason this auxiliary feed is leaking water, this particular top hat O-ring will need to be replaced. It easily is removed. When replacing it with a new top hat O-ring seal, be certain that it is free of debris. And replace with a new top hat O-ring seal. Again, using your tweezers, pull out your auxiliary water feed double O-ring valve and retain for reassembly. Slide down your auxiliary water feed retaining ring. You can now proceed to remove cone and cover. Removing the auxiliary water feed allows you to, of course, remove body control plate covers on your colonoscopes. When reassembling the endoscope, be sure that all O-rings are clean and free of debris. When sliding up body covers over auxiliary water feed, be sure that the hole aligns with your auxiliary water feed internally. Slide up your cone in order to tighten auxiliary water feed body part up, but do not tighten all the way. Just finger tight. This will allow you to slide this back and forth to align properly. Obtain your round auxiliary water feed ring and slide this over the auxiliary water feed port. There is only one way, and there is a notch which allows you to slide ring up and over. Obtain your double O-ring assembly, being sure the O-rings are clean. If necessary, use a small paintbrush with some white lithium grease to be sure the O-rings make the seal. Align the two notches with the notches in the auxiliary water feed cover for any reason these notches are broken off or missing from the actual cover itself, the auxiliary cover will need to be replaced. Retain your auxiliary water feed assembly with your top hat O-ring, again being sure that this is clean and free of debris. If it is damaged or cracked or peeled, you will need to replace it with a new top hat O-ring seal. You can use a small amount of white lithium grease. Slide down and match the notches to meet the other body notch. Obtain your round locking nut and screw on clockwise. You can use a small amount of black RTV around the threads. Tighten down auxiliary water feed with tweezers. Once auxiliary water cap assembly is tightened down, using your B cap, replace and match its body. Push down, it should slide over and not fall off. If it is loose, you will need to replace this B cap. Once this is sealed and tightened down, you can go ahead and airtight test the endoscope with an air tester to be sure that there is no leaks from your body sections.